Hello friends, so today I'll be reviewing my currently owned Ursa Mini Pro G2. Let me get that in focus for you. There you go, nice and focused. So it's gonna be a short review and I will try to answer 6 questions really. Why did I get it? The good, the bad, who is it for? Can it keep up with the 2024 market and the competition? And ultimately whether I'm keeping it or not. So first one is the easy one. Why did I get it? As many of you, I'm sure, who are watching this video and maybe some of the other of my videos, this is my passion, this is my hobby. I am not only fascinated with the cinema, but also maybe even more so sometimes with the technology behind it. So that camera is an absolute technological marvel. It was on my list of cameras to get eventually. By now, probably I'm in a, hard to say, 60, 70 camera bodies in. Yeah, I know, somebody will think that it's absolutely crazy that somebody needs to go through 70-ish camera bodies to decide what cameras they like and what they don't like. It's not just about deciding which camera I like, which I don't like. It is actually a hobby of mine. I love testing them. I love this. The whole reason why this channel exists is because I love the technology. It's not because anybody sends me anything yet anyway. I get an occasional Chinese thingy bob sent to me for a review and I'm really bad at reviewing those on time. But when it comes to cameras, it is just purely my passion. Nobody sends them to me and I just have natural fascination from the engineering side of things. As you may know, I'm a full-time IT professional as well as other things. So this just grabs my attention and drives my passion in order to shoot more. I know it's a bit sad, yes, that the gear drives me to shoot stuff, but is what it is. Different things motivate different people. And I know for a fact that if I was to be on a set, larger set than I would normally do, I do some commercial work, but if I was to do on a grand cinema level stuff, I know for a fact that I would not go any further than either an operator or a DP. That would be the most that I would go for. So that camera review is based on my mostly technological analysis. I shoot a bunch of stock footage still, so maybe this will be somewhat relatable to some people. But anyway, I thought that I will tell you my point of view. Where is this coming from? So in terms of positives, I have 10 points. And as you can pick up from now, I like to number things. So to begin with is the sensor size. It's a 4.6K, same resolution as some of the Alexa cameras, which I like. It kind of gives you this notion that you have something similar to Alexa, but also it's a very nice sweet spot resolution. It actually, for me, is the absolute perfect because of the manageable file sizes, but I'll touch on that later. In terms of also the sensor size, it is the most perfect Super 35 sensor size, just purely based on the fact that it's 25 millimeters. If you look at film and movies shot on film, Super 35 movies shot on film, 25 millimeters is usually the actual aperture opening of the hole in the camera that the light can go through onto the film. So the Super 35 cameras, and I'm just generalizing film cameras, the entrance pupil or the hole that, that's the lens sit here, and then I'm gesticulating myself very inappropriately, but you know what I mean. So there is an entrance point through which the light goes in, and that entrance point is usually limited to 25 millimeters or so. So even if you try to imagine that it could record a bit more on a film, it cannot, because full aperture is full aperture. So, and that's what I like. It again gives you that sensation or that some sort of inspiration that camera is somehow Hollywood more related. There's a bunch of cameras that are about 27 millimeters, including the Alexa Minis and the Komodo and the Ursa 12K, for example. They're all 27 millimeters, but that's actually already wider than the classic Super 35 that we know of in the movies. Number 2 is the absolute blazingly fast sensor readout. It is actually even faster than some of the Alexa cameras at 7.4 milliseconds or so. I will put the actual figure somewhere here because I can't remember the exact figure. But the fast sensor readout is very important if you want to shoot anamorphic. For example, this full frame that I shoot him on now, the entire width, if you capture it, the 3x2 sensor, readout speed is 25-ish milliseconds. So Ursa is 4 times faster readout, and you actually can see the difference. That's at that point, you already can see the difference. I think past 10 milliseconds is where you can have problems in terms of handheld and especially anamorphic, because anamorphic, you're reading the entire sensor, and when you squeezing back the footage that's been stretched out across the sensor, because that's actually the term that people should be using, not de-squeeze. Nothing is squeezed and then de-squeezed. Actually, the footage is being stretched out vertically and then squeezed back in post. Because if you ever look at the sides of your footage, that doesn't change. The horizontal line doesn't change, it's just the vertical. Anyway, so shooting anamorphic in slow readout speed sensors can be really problematic if you have any kind of handheld motion or movement in place. If you stabilize the camera and you have it on a tripod, that's never a problem. If you have some sort of talking head video, again, shoot where things of subjects moving are not too fast, that's never going to be a problem. But if you're doing any handheld work, the fast sensor readout, you will see pay off super fast. Number 3 on my list is the ergonomics. This camera is an absolute joy to operate, to pick up with your hands. Actually, a lot of people think that it's quite big, and I was of the same opinion when I saw the shots online, and maybe because some of the people that were handling them, I don't know, positioned themselves slightly weirdly or whatever, but it's actually not that big. It's really, really, really not that big. It's only about 1.5 kilos heavier than the full frame or the Pocket 6K Pro. In reality, that's just one lens extra or larger lens difference. That's how you can imagine it. So it is really not that big or that heavy. Like, I'm even looking at them side by side, the full frame, and this is, it's just a little bit bigger. And in the images as well, I saw that it shows a bit wide. It's not that wide. And especially when you put the handle on top, it becomes quite narrow. In a good way. And so yeah, handling it is an absolute pleasure. Shooting with it handheld, with the super fast sensor readout, with a little bit of extra weight, and just the shape of it. I used to think all these people just simping over it are losing their minds. What's the point? I get it. Going in the field, shooting with that camera is an absolute pleasure. And I definitely see myself maybe even looking at the 12K in the future. That depends on what things are coming my way, but about that a bit later. Number 4 on my list is very simple, is the built-in NDs. The 6K Pro really spoiled me, and after it I actually even more prefer the ND setup on the Ursas because it's a mechanical switch. On a 6K Pro you have to cycle through them with the button, and actually there is a lot more delay, lag if you will, between the ND covering the sensor versus the Ursa. I prefer the mechanical one instead. The other point is, in terms of setup, I can look at Ursa and I can look at the number that it says. If it's number 1, it means there's no ND, it's clear. So before I even pick it up, I can be sure what ND setting it's already set to. And the NDs are super high quality. They're not like when you're using your circular polarizers, which I have somewhere. They don't create the polarization effect, and they also IR coated, so that eliminates, because when it's clear, the IR pollution is a bit more visible. So yeah, really happy with NDs. Number 5 is the slow motion. This is perfection in terms of what you get out of this camera in terms of slow motion. It's actually one of the main points why you should be considering it, because you're getting 120 FPS, 4.6K full sensor readout, no limitations whatsoever, raw recording. You're also getting 300 FPS HD cropped in recording. For extra cases, scenarios, I shot a video of my dog jumping around before. You can have a look somewhere. You'll see, or in my channel. It looks phenomenal. It looks great. If you pump enough light, you really need to light it really well. If you don't, then footage can look a bit noisy because you're cropping in on such a small area of the sensor. But yeah, there's plenty of slow motion options, more so than almost any camera that Blackmagic can offer on that kind of area of the sensor. So, and it looks amazing. It looks absolutely fantastic. Paired with the super fast sensor readout and the heavier body and the slow motion, you pretty much completely don't need the gimbal. In my case anyway. It creates this beautiful flowy video that is just unmatched with any other camera straight out of the box without any additional rigging or additional support. Number 6 is a small one and a weird one, but important for me. It has a 1 ISO range, and I like it because depending on what ISO range on dual gain sensors like full frame or the Pocket 6K, 4K, 6K Pro and 6K G2, when they switch to second gain, which is about 1250 on most of them, the dynamic range drops significantly and your clipping point is become a lot earlier and your shadows get cleaner, yes, but you really have to look out for the clipping point of the highlights. And it's almost, personally, I almost never have use for it. I always stay within the 1 range, but at the same time, that 1 range is quite limited. It's nothing, as you can see in life and technology, is without drawbacks. So you get a bit of a jump in between 1000 and 3200 or so. But in here, I feel like in Ursa, that ISO range is really nicely spread out. I like it just in one bang. It's exactly the same as in Red Komodo, and I use them both side by side a little bit. And usually use ISO just as some sort of preview of exposure. You rely much more on your histogram and the clipping point rather than ISO. So yeah, I really like that. Number 8, I already kind of touched on it, is the smaller file sizes. Actually, in a 4.6K sensor size resolution sensor, it's significantly smaller file sizes compared to 6K or 6K full frame, especially if you're recording open gate. You are adding so many extra pixels that they just take a lot of space. There's no way about it. And I wish Blackmagic actually, when they demonstrate their data rates, would show it megabits or megabytes per pixel rather than 30 frames per second and various whatever things. And for me anyway. So yeah, but I do enjoy that you put CFast 2.0 cards and they don't really fill up as fast as they did on any other cameras that were 6K sensors. I think I skipped number 7. So let's assume previous was number 7 and this will be number 8 again, which is the EF mount. I personally could not care less about mirrorless mounts. And by the looks of it, Blackmagic, in terms of their flagship cameras, the new coming out Ursas, they're also none of them mirrorless. They're all either EF, PL, or LPL. And I get it why. And also, my entire collection of lenses is all EF mounts. So yeah, I actually prefer a lot more EF mount. Gonna say EF mount more often? Anyway, number 10 is, if you didn't gather before from what I said, the image quality. There's something really special about this camera. I thought that initially that's just a myth, that people are just, simping over a camera that has some sort of mythical status. But no, it is really nice. I think mostly is down to 2 things. 1 is much faster sensor readout time, and 2 is the size. So being a bit bigger and heavier and reading the sensor faster, you might have a bit more perceivable sharpness and crispiness. So that's why I think people sometimes think that that's what creates this beautiful image. And I must agree, yeah, if I shoot handheld, this is phenomenal. And it does look better than my pockets, all the pockets really. I tested against a bunch of them, and this does stand out if everything lit equally. If not, there are some benefits that the pockets have, especially when their second gain is engaged. So naturally, not everything is so fantastic, and there are a couple of things that, well, to be precise, 5, that are not so great about the camera for some of the people that might be watching this. For myself personally, they are both a drawback and a benefit, but you will see what I mean. So first one to begin with is the size. Obviously, it's a bit of a bigger camera than your typical mirrorless body. But for me, if I was to shoot that camera in the field, which is its ideal location, it could not be more perfect. Just because if I need to shoot in a field and I use this camera, so this is how I would operate it. Some people have different ways, whatever, but this is my preferred option. I have an additional point into my chest and I tuck in like this, and from behind and most of my sides, you can't really tell what am I shooting with. Where if I shoot with one of the mirrorless cameras, that's where the problems begin. And I mean mirrorless that shoot raw. And okay, actually the pockets. I need to use one of these things. And when I use one of these things, pretty much 9 out of 10 times somebody will approach me to ask me, inquire what type of production I'm shooting for and if I have a permit. And as you may well be aware, some of us may not necessarily have permits and like to shoot on locations as is. So that can be a problem. If you want to keep it low-key, incognito-like, I can see this to be an absolute superior option compared to the gimbal. But there is a catch. You are locked into that, where otherwise you can disconnect the camera from the gimbal. And that's why for some of you, this might be perceived as a drawback. Number 2 is the battery. There is no way around it. This camera is consuming about double the amount of energy compared to the typical pockets. The pockets are about 20 watts and this is close to 40. So therefore you need double the amount of battery. And I'm using these small rig, latest generation batteries. They're really cool. They're really nice. They are, especially this one, the 50 watt hour battery is very compact and lasts me almost exactly the same time as one of these. So that's the difference really. But they are a bit pricier and they're a bit bigger. Also a very cool feature of this battery is that you can actually charge it through the USB-C from your MacBook Pro charger and it will power both the battery and the camera because it provides around 40 watts, no problem. Number 3 is in underexposed scenarios, you will have issues with fixed pattern noise if you're trying to bring up something below maybe 4 to 5 stops. So if you're trying to bring something that you either severely messed up or you just have a very, very high dynamic range scene, say shooting into the sunset and it's very shadowy just below it, you might run into the fixed pattern noise type of situation. But you can overcome it with a couple of things. If you're shooting a very dim scenario, you can then just, what I do at least, is put the camera on a tripod and run at a lower shutter speed, especially because in these instances, you're most likely just capturing an environment, either a landscape or whatever. So for me, that's not a problem. And second, just light it better. For me, that's not really an issue, but I thought you should be aware, especially if you're coming from the expectations of mirrorless or even some of the pockets. Number 4 is a very tiny, I don't even know if it classifies as a problem, but it's only a CFast 2.0. It has 2 slots, but they're not redundant recording. And I'd rather have a CFast Express Type B cards because that's what most media I am actually shooting at now, even that full frame that shoots me as we are speaking. So I would prefer that much more than CFast 2. But additionally, it also has SD and SSD recording capability if you like that. SSD is not very nice located. It's behind the door, so you cannot close the door if you record it to SSD, or you need to buy some sort of skinny ribbon type SD USB type C cable, which I saw they're actually available. So like anything, any problem has a solution. And number 5, for the likes of me, again, for the civilians, there is no HDMI recording, or at least no HDMI preview. And I would really much rather have HDMI, because all my monitoring stuff is HDMI based, not SDI based. You have a plenty of SDI connections all around, and in more serious production types, that might not be a problem. Actually, if anything, that might be a benefit. But again, we're talking about us, you know, the likes of people that watching these kind of videos. HDMI is still a preferred option, and it doesn't have it. I said this is going to be a fairly short video, and I said to my wife, give me 20 minutes maximum. I have no idea how much it's passed, but I have a feeling it's been a long time. And for some reason, the full frame failed me once. It stopped recording, even though it has Angelbird super fast card in it. It just pooped itself out. So, and I'm paranoidly looking now both at it and my Zoom recorder. And actually, when I resumed the recording first time, I forgot to put the Zoom recorder on, so I had to redo a whole big portion of this review again. So I'm essentially doing this for the 3rd time now. Anyway, carrying on. So who is this camera for? It's a fairly easy answer for me personally. It's for anybody that requires shooting handheld, slow motion, or anamorphic, or all 3. If you are one of those people that really puts one of those 3 points above anything else, this is the camera to get. Compared to other pockets, this is definitely the camera to get. Just purely based on superior sensor readout, slow motion options, and the size. The ergonomics, the size, everything. Just everything is almost perfectly built for a handheld anamorphic shooter. So if you're one of those people, if you know that you like doing documentaries, or you're shooting in a field for reportage or interviews that, you know, require you to go out and do handheld stuff, or it's mainly documentaries if I think about it, yeah, then you definitely might want to consider that instead of anything else. And also for people who are budget conscious, and that perfectly ties into one of the last points that we're covering during this review, which is the competition and the relevance in 2024. For me, the closest competition would be either Nikon Z9 or the Komodo, the original one. And it actually surpasses both of them. Just in terms of Komodo, for example, Komodo has the same issue as all the mirrorless. You need to still add a monitor and other stuff to make it work. This is a much more self-contained package, so I like that. And also, it has 120 FPS, not additionally cropped, where Komodo does not have that. I'm not talking about Komodo X because that's a completely different price bracket, but within this price range, Ursa definitely trumps it. And the Z9, so far, the amount of time I had to play with Z8 recently, I didn't like how it recovers the white balance, how it's shifting. It's an indication for me either they didn't really work out their raw codec yet, or I don't know, whatever they're doing, above the fact that it's almost uneditable on anything less than Mac Ultra Studio, whatever. My M1 Pro has real struggle editing Z8 and RAW files. Don't know why. It's just either inefficient codec or not optimized as well, or whatever. But Blackmagic is superior in terms of actual codec. It's so much more easier to edit. And then again, just like with the Komodo and any other mirrorless, you have the issues of stabilizing it. I really don't like IBIS. I don't like IBIS on any systems apart maybe from Panasonic, and Nikon is somewhere in between, maybe Panasonic and Sony. Not as bad as Sony, but far from Panasonic. And again, I don't really classify Nikon just yet as a proper RAW. For me, for example, when I tested this versus the Komodo, I saw no difference in terms of color fidelity and white balance shift, and in general manipulating colors didn't feel destructive, didn't feel like a 10-bit. Before any of you Nikon fanboys get your pitchforks and whatever, go and buy the camera and test it for yourselves. I've been Nikon fanboy since the beginning of days. That's my first camera and I still have a collection of Nikon cameras, so shut the fuck up. Now the biggest question, am I keeping it? Short answer, no. Not because there is something wrong with the camera, but there are things that are changing in my life at the moment that might involve me moving. And I'm also getting some exciting opportunities that I kind of hinted in the beginning that will require me to do a lot more studio work than field work, which means that I have to invest in another pocket full frame body. So I'm getting rid of a bunch of stuff, and there will be maybe I'll put the link of my eBay stuff that I'll be selling my equipment. Actually, by the time this is out, this will be live. Yeah, so perfect. So yeah, I'll be selling it on eBay because I simply just don't have the use for it. I initially thought that I will be covering certain projects going in the field and shooting handheld, but they never panned out. And instead, something a lot more exciting and cool appeared in my life, almost out of thin air, and I'm really excited about it. I'm not intentionally mysterious, it's just a lot of moving parts, a lot of people involved. I don't want to both cross any NDAs or jinx anything, so just saying, for my use, that's not the camera that I needed now, and I have other things that I need to spend the money for. So yeah, that's my 2 cents in terms of what this camera is and what it can do, and in terms of its image quality and usability and the good and the bad points. I hope I covered enough to for those who are looking to get one or interested in general. What is this? Honestly, I've never felt so almost in love with the camera as I did with this, just because of ergonomics. It's such a pleasure just to grab it and run with it, and it's such a small compact thing. I thought it's a lot bigger, but actually it's not. It's really cool. It's really nice. It runs circles around Komodos and all the mirrorless, hands down, but I can't have everything, you know. As much as you like to have things, maybe I would like to have another motorcycle and whatnot, but yeah, I cannot justify having it at the moment. Like I said, other things are in pipeworks, so hopefully these things will pan out, and I need to be ready for them. But I would like to leave this review with just a little bit of a, not disclaimer, but more of a warning for all of you people that are looking at these reviews obsessively and thinking like, you know, is this camera better or that camera better? I have a golden saying that I always go by. If in doubt, test it out. No matter how, there is plenty ways of how you can get hands-on equipment, and just test it out for yourselves. Because there is a lot of YouTubers that are being sponsored or biased or whatever, you know, even just general people like, you know, like myself or anybody else, they could have their own biases why they're leaning towards one camera or the other, or brands or whatnot. So use your brain. At the end of the day, it's your money, so it's cheaper sometimes to rent something and test it for yourself than do what I do, keep buying shit and then selling it on eBay. Anyway, that's it from me for now. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.